All right. Let's talk about magnetic particle inspection.
You need to start drinking.
Magnetic particle inspection. Basics. Or MT, which is what some of you have in your head right now. MT. All right. We can describe this as an NDT. What's NDT stand for? What's NDI stand for? All right, can be both ways. Method. Method that is used to reveal surface and near surface and near surface discontinuities. In what kind of material? Ferrous, all right. Ferromagnetic. I lost my ETIC, there we go, magnetic parts. All right, what are my major limitations?
You need electricity.
You do not need electricity. You do not need a big old machine.
Magnetic.
We need ferromagnetic material. So how well is it going to work if we have aluminum?
Not very well.
Yeah. I checked all your aluminum parts, Kevin, with Magnaflux, and not a single one was broken. It's kind of a funny thing. Can only detect surface and near surface. How far near?
Quarter inch.
Depends on how much power you got and what kind of machine you have.
What kind of power you're using? Is DC or AC?
Very good. So we'll say up to, we'll have a quarter inch. All right. Surface must be clean and compatible. Clean must be clean and compatible with the medium used. The medium used. Does it have to be free of paint?
Yes. No.
Or plating? Well, if it's going to detect subsurface discontinuities, it'll detect it through the paint. It can be a problem if you have paint. It can be a problem if you have grease or oils. I should show you guys what grease and oil looks like under a black light. It reflects right back at you. It fluoresces a purple. And so it makes it very difficult, and it kind of doesn't mix well with the medium, and this kind of makes a mess of things. So it should be, that's why I say clean. Possibility, also possibility, oh, I used possibility of arc strikes. What's an arc strike?
When it sparks.
What causes that?
Improper connection with the pads.
Not always improper connection with the pads, because improper implies that somebody did something bad. Well, of course.
Isn't that what happened?
Well, yeah, you did something bad, but if the part does not make good contact with the pads, maybe that's because there's a coating on the part, or paint could do it. Something that doesn't connect the part to the pad, it will burn through the pad. It will actually arc across, and the pad welds itself to the part. And so it's really hard if you have a very expensive part, you're supposed to be inspecting it, and you've arced across to it, and now you've welded a piece of copper on there, and people, what's this copper welded on there for? Well, that's how I indicate a good part. So camshafts are the worst. I don't know what it is about camshafts, but they are the absolute worst part. It seems like out of every 10 that I would do, one would arc. And yes, it always scares you. All right, let's see, theory. Theory of magnetization. Well, we really covered this already, didn't we? And electricity. So I don't have to spend a lot on it, but just to remind you, well, I don't want to write a whole bunch. I guess I will. Yeah, we'll keep it very simple. So when a part is magnetized, the domains line up. Actually, let me back up a little bit. I'll say it this way. The domains, or molecules, as some books call it, have their north and south line up. So if you don't remember, should I say one line up slash, yeah, we'll leave it at that. So if you don't remember, I talked about kind of a simplistic way of looking at it. If we look at a part, within a part, we could imagine that there's all these little bar magnets, and the bar magnets may go just all over the place in all different kind of ways, and they will have a north at one end and a south and a south and a north and a north and a south, and they're just random. And so it doesn't matter which way they go. So when all of these domains are scrambled and they're not headed the same way, the entire part has no magnetism. But if I pass a current through the part or subject the part to a magnetizing force, doesn't have to be current going through it, then what happens is all these little domains within it line up, and when they line up, north, south, what would go here? North, south, north, south. So this becomes the south, and this becomes the north, and lines of flux travel from north to south. And so the lines of flux leave the part, and it's all magnetized. So now I have a bar magnet where this is north and this is south. To demagnetize it, I just scramble it, and I go back to where I was before. So we can magnetize by either subjecting the part to a magnetizing source by running current through it, or subjecting it to a magnetic force next to it. Passing a current through or around a ferrous part will cause the molecules to line up and the part to become magnetized. Ferrous part will cause the molecules to line up and the part to become magnetized. So again, if we look at a bar magnet, what's a bar magnet? Go ahead. What's a bar magnet? I'm sure you got something here. My writing just getting that much worse. Maybe I had a
I
stroke.
believe so, yeah.
You're writing like the students, it's just getting worse.
There. Bar magnet. Hey, we can actually read that. What about a bar magnet? Well, a bar magnet is just a bar that is a magnet. Not the kind of bar you guys are going to later tonight, but that kind of bar. All right.
Tomorrow night is-
has north at one end and south at the other. Now, when I'm doing magnetic particle inspection, I don't care which side is the north and I don't care which part is the south. It makes absolutely no difference whatsoever, but I do want to know where the poles are. That makes a huge difference to me. I mean, that's just about everything. It means everything where the poles are actually located. So, not that it matters, but lines of flux. Lines of flux. What are lines of flux? They're the invisible magnetic lines that are radiating out from a magnet, pole to pole. So in this particular magnet, I don't know why this is not cooperating. Colors aren't working well.
You're moving the wrong thing.
Huh?
You're moving the wrong thing.
Well, I wanted to move this over here.
You gotta click up top the box. Yeah.
With the color.
In the color.
That's not how I normally do it. I normally can actually pick
Yeah,
it from right
there
here.
you go.
And I can do that and it stays. But it didn't stay. So that's very annoying. So I don't know why. But anyway.
Oh, you need to clear an empty one.
What?
The one that are empty, blank.
No, I can usually change it that way. Anyway, okay. Lines of flux, back to this. Lines of flux travel. Oh, now you maybe change it there. Travel. Lines of flux travel through the air from north to south. Flux travel in the air from north to south, which means inside the magnet they must travel south to north and then back around. That didn't work at all. So outside here, they're going that way. Doesn't really matter. What matters is that we know that when the north is at one end of a magnet or a bar and south is at the other, what kind of magnetism is that? Not AC. Oh, we'll get to that. I already lost you. All right. That we do have flux that is going outside in the air and coming back around. And that's an important point that we're going to have to look at later. And remember that there's a time when it's actually going out and around through the air. So,
That way would be longitudinal, right?
what?
That would be longitudinal, right?
No. Circular. Wait, longitudinal. Yes. Sorry.
Indirect.
Sorry. Okay. Let's skip to this. If a bar magnet is bent into a circle, the flux will concentrate at the opening. So I take that bar magnet and I roll it around in sort of a circle, give it some depth. My flux is going to be concentrated right here at this point. All right, resuming. Okay, so if I bend this magnet around, and again, it does not matter where north and south is, but just to make everybody happy, I'll say that's north, that's south. And what's going to happen is the lines of flux are going to concentrate and be traveling through here. But they're also going to kind of build up right there. And that is the entire principle of magnaflux, or magnetic particle inspection, I should say, is that where you find this flux leakage, we're going to put a material on there that is fluoresces, in this case, and it's going to show up like that. So that's what we're looking for. So what kind of magnetism would this be right here? This would be circular. So because if there is no, if there is no actual gap there, and this is all continuous, bend it bar magnet around and then welded it closed, will I get any? I will get no flux leakage and I will get no indication. What's that?
When it's circle, it's no pole.
There is no pole. Well, let's think here. So, but if I had a part that was, we're just kind of getting ahead of ourselves this way, and it was laid out, and this is north, and this is south. Let me think here. So we have lines of flux that are traveling through it around this way, and then back through. Do I have circular or longitudinal magnetization? All right, so I would have created, for those of you who had it, I would have created something like this in the coil or in a headshot.
Headshot.
No,
Coil.
Coil.
And see, that's where it's confusing.
I know. Because this, what is this right here? I made it, think of this as a crankshaft.
Okay. Circular coil.
It's circular magnetization.
Yeah.
And this big circle on the bench does not make
It makes one.
circular. So this had to be done with a coil. So it would have been a part in the coil. So here's my coil, kind of looking at it. And that means that indications are going to show up going
vertical.
this way. All right. Okay. Let's see. Let's go with some definitions here. Definitions. Well, first we'll talk about magnetic flux. What is magnetic flux?
Invisible lines that travel from.
Ooh, I like that. Invisible lines of force in a magnetic circuit. In a magnetic circuit. All right. Flux density. What is flux density? Strength. Very good. Okay. So is the strength of the flux is the strength of flux measured in, what's the unit? Gauss. Gauss. So is my flux density, am I going to even pick up any flux density on this right here? This part here? No. How about this part? Where's the greatest flux density? Right here near the poles, where it's all coming out. All right, and then we have a flux capacitor. What is that?
Where you put your banana.
That's just a made-up thing. Don't write that down. So,
I mean, it kind of makes sense.
I know it's something that stores up flux. Now it makes perfect sense.
Broke my hopes and dreams.
I know you really thought there was one, huh? This is the best day ever. It's practically like winning the lottery.
I have the DeLorean outside.
But now it's
I
not.
can see the flux capacitor.
Now you know how you felt.
Marty McFly. Hoverboards.
All right, permeability. Permeability. What is permeability?
How easily you can handle it.
Okay, this is going to be another important thing. So it's the ease with which magnetic lines of flux is established in a given material. So the ease with which a magnetic flux is established in a given material. So a part, a metal with high permeability, is, let's go up here. Are we good? Janet's not here, is she? Everybody say hi, Janet. She's not here. with high permeability is easily or not easily? Easily magnetized. All right, so if it's easily magnetized, that also means that it's easy to demagnetize. So it doesn't really hold its magnetism well. So this means the part will also lose its magnetism easily. Also lose its magnetism. Easily. And what was your comment there, Mark?
Low retentivity.
He is correct. Low retentivity. Okay, so that comes into play in a lot of different ways, and it's something that you really have to understand when you are doing magnetic particle inspections. So working with a lot of you guys, I've explained that, and I do mean guys, so not you. Sure. So I could name names. How many name names? All right. So guys like PK. No, I'm just kidding.
Don't turn off the lamp.
Okay. So I've explained to you, and we'll get into this a little bit more, but there's this difference between doing wet continuous and residual. So wet continuous, you have to put the media on the part. You put the media on the part, and as it's flowing, this residual flow, if you will, because you're not supposed to hold the nozzle on while you're doing it. So you immediately stop the nozzle and apply the current to the power, right? So at that point, you've done a continuous, wet continuous, and you would inspect the part. Now, wet continuous has the most sensitivity. There are parts that you can do without that, which would be what? Residual, thank you. So residual. So some of you guys think everything is residual. So you do this beautiful wet continuous and you grab the part with your hands and you put it somewhere and it's like there's nothing but fingerprints everywhere. And you're like, well, okay, I'll just do residual then. And it's like, well, you can't do that. If you're doing wet continuous, you need to preserve what you've just done. And you can't just keep adding fluid every time you want to. So, yeah, you did that, huh?
No, I didn't.
Okay. There's someone that looked like
No,
you.
but maybe I did.
Yeah, maybe just a little bit, just a couple, 6, 7 times.
When you grab like for the crankshaft, for example,
Yeah.
like when you're putting it out, how are you supposed to grab that with just like 2 fingers and lower it? Without, like,
You have to have an overhead crane, and it gets really complicated.
I'm saying like, or like bigger parts when you have
It would've
it in
been nice
Magnaflux.
if the panel would have rotated.
Okay, so the way I do it is, you know how those wooden stands are there? So we're going to pull it out. Well, first of all, I do a wet continuous on the crankshaft. Then I inspect it what I can in the critical areas without touching it or moving it. That gives me the opportunity, if there's anything amiss, that I could do another wet continuous shot. It's just really easy to do. Then once I'm satisfied of the critical areas, the best I can see, I will grab it in the areas that it's going to already touch in that stand that we have. So I'll pick it up there and put it in the stand. Then I'll do the whole inspection of the crankshaft. Then I'll put it back in, and I can remagnetize it and move the stands, put them somewhere else, pick it up, put it somewhere else. So it's a process. You actually have to, you got to do it. It's difficult.
So the part has residual magnetism, right?
Yeah.
You put it on the stand, wooden stand.
Okay.
Why should it matter, like, you know, you see that you think it's a crack and then like you just wipe it off with your hand and like spray it again. It shouldn't matter, right?
It shouldn't matter if it's got enough retentivity in it. It should work. That's the thing. It should. But is it a part that has the retentivity? So if you're reading something that has the process control and it says this part must be inspected using wet continuous, even a crankshaft, if it says the crankshaft must be inspected using wet continuous, yeah, I could sit there and argue all day that I can probably get the same indication out of it with residual, but there isn't the same amount of magnetism. You know, we could experiment with that with our Gauss meter. I could show you that while under the magnetizing force, the Gauss is going to be extremely high, and it's going to fall off some. And we'll talk about the hysteresis loop, and that's exactly what that is. So it does get higher while it's being magnetized and drops off to a point. It doesn't go up to this level and stay there. It drops considerably depending on the part. All right, where was I? Reluctance. Oh, no, I did permeability, reluctance. Reluctance. It is the inverse of permeability. It's like permeability over one over, I mean. So if something has high reluctance, it has, well, what does that mean directly? So this part has I say, well, it's high reluctance. That means it doesn't want to magnetize easily
Yes.
and take more current. But once I get the magnetism in there, what happens?
It
stays.
It stays. Yep.
So how is it different from retentivity?
It's not. Let me write this, and then I'll bring those two together. So, actually, I'm going to do one more thing, then we'll put it together. So, the where am I? Reluctance. The opposition of the opposition of a magnetic flux. And then this is retentivity, because I only mentioned it, I didn't write it down, right? Retentivity, the ability of material to retain magnetism, which is the ability of a material to retain magnetism. Okay, so we take apart. Let's take a crankshaft. Crankshaft has high carbon steel, so I've already told you that that has a rather high retentivity, right? So if it has a high retentivity, I can also say that, what about its reluctance? High reluctance?
High reluctance.
High reluctance. It doesn't want to be magnetized, but once I get it there, it stays. All right, so that's what it is. And so if I have a part that is easily magnetized, then it also loses it real easy, which is going to be something like, I always say connecting rods because they're rather soft. We did that connecting rod that was smashed on the end. And how many cracks do we have? Not a single one. The entire end was smashed over and peened, and it didn't have a single crack. It had some stressing on it, but it was pretty well. So does that answer the question there? So high reluctance means high retentivity. Low reluctance means low retentivity.
So why
what's the
even
difference?
why even have reluctance then?
Oh, I don't know.
Easier math.
Another word, our word, get you all confused. Okay, so everybody in here has had electricity. Let's talk about magnetos. A couple of you had a couple times. So,
Soft and cold, high permeability.
okay, so talk about the magneto. So what about the rotor in it? What did it have?
High retentivity.
High retentivity. What about its reluctance?
High reluctance.
So was it hard to magnetize it?
Yeah.
It was quite difficult to demagnetize it. Let me tell you that. Yeah. In fact, until we got this machine, I was never able to really demagnetize them at all. We had nothing around here that was powerful enough to do it.
That's good though.
Put it in the
It's a good thing. Okay, but what about now the pole shoes and the pole shoe extensions? You're like, what? Pole shoe? Pole? Those are the things that, no. So, what about those? What were those?
High permeability.
Very high permeability. You want the lines of flux to be traveling through there without any resistance whatsoever. And you also, at the same time, don't want them to stay magnetized, because if they do, then you've got to stop, turn it around, and that takes power. And so it had very low retentivity, but and reluctance. It had high or low reluctance? Very low reluctance. All right. And that all leads to then the last R word here, residual magnetism. Which is the amount of magnetism that remains after in the material after the magnetizing force has been removed. The amount of magnetism that remains in a material after the magnetizing force is removed. So even if it has high retentivity, it's going to lose some of it. I don't know of any material that you can magnetize it to a specific point and it just stays there. It's like, that's pretty good. It's always going to fall off a little bit. Which is why I say that even on a part that you can get away with residual magnetism inspections, you're still better off and it's still more sensitive if you're using the continuous. Material properties. All right, so put this into practice. Soft iron. Kind of a oxymoron, but soft iron. So we'll say low carbon steel. Low carbon steel. All right, you tell me, what about the permeability? High permeability? Which means that it is what, in layman terms? Easily magnetized. So. Easily magnetized. What about its residual magnetism? Okay. Low residual. How about hard irons? So it'd be high carbon steel. What is the permeability? Okay, low permeability. And what about its retentivity? High retentivity. All right. You okay down there? Sitting in the luxury box seats and you flipping stuff? Okay, what do I have here? Gauss meters. This is also called a. I just wrote on it. How horrible is that? It's brand new and I just wrote on it. That's, all right, laser pointers so Steve can see it. Wait, what are these right here?
Batteries.
Oh, okay, excellent. All right, you guys just make sure you're paying attention. All right, so this is the cheap version. All right, and so it's just got a little bar magnet in there, if you will, on a little swivel. And so when you get it near something, it's going to attract the magnet in there or repel the magnet in there. And that's the plus and minus. Is it repelling it or is it attracting it? It doesn't matter, you know, if it says plus or minus, but you're just going to read Gauss on this thing. So as you get this close to a source, you're going to read Gauss. So if I have a bar magnet with the north at one end and south at the other, is this going to give me a good indication?
Yes.
All right. Now if I take something that is make sure I don't spill on myself, that is round, and I have used a headshot, which is then what? Circular. Okay, so it's the magnetism is going this way. How well is the Gauss meter going to work?
Not very well.
Barely going to read anything because it's all, most of the magnetic flux is contained within that part. So you can take something like that and look at it and go, well, hey, it's not magnetized. Well, that may not be true at all. So you got to be careful with that. This over here is just, I think everybody's had a chance to play with ours here, which is just a very, I don't know if I wonder if I took that picture, which is just a very nice machine, also called a Tesla meter. And it will read a lot. We brought it in here and played, I think, with some of the rare earth magnets, didn't we? And we were getting, so this will go up to 10. I think we've had this thing up to what, a couple hundred? You guys don't remember. I remember.
No, we did it when we magnetized one of the, I think it was the crankshaft.
Oh, I actually have those rare earth magnets and I brought
Oh,
them
yeah,
in.
yeah, those small ones.
Those little tiny magnets? Yeah.
Tim couldn't take it.
Poor Tim. All right.
We love you, Tim.
I know. Mr. Tim. All right. This is what's known as a hysteresis loop. And I used that word a minute ago. And I will explain it here using my notes so I don't mess it up. But what it is, it describes the behavior of a magnetized part. So we start right here. This is the starting point. We have flux density, plus and minus, which would be like saying north and south, and the magnetizing force one way versus a magnetizing force the other way. So if we start here in the middle, I think I already said that represents magnetic force. Yeah, I got that. The magnetizing force is applied, H plus. Here's H plus. We apply a magnetizing force here, and this describes what's happening inside the part. So the part is then magnetized to the saturation point because I've got the magnetizing force on it. So let's say it's a crankshaft inside of the head shot. So I hit the head shot, and I've got it at 4,000 amps or whatever, right? That's a lot. So, but if it was 4 inches big, it'd be fine. So I have this huge magnetizing force. I'm going to get this saturation inside the part. Then the Magnaflux machine shuts off after half a second, and what's left, boom, is right there. So, which is to say that during the magnetizing shot, the head shot, this is what I'm dealing with. That's why wet continuous is such a great thing at this point. So if I do that, I'm gonna get better indications, right? Then I stop the magnetizing force. This is what's left. I take it out of the heads. I put it in a cradle. I'm inspecting it. I'm doing got fingerprints, so that may be dust. I'm dealing with it down here. I've lost some magnetism. So you just have to be very aware of that. So that is one of the things that it's just process. When you're doing this stuff, I've showed you guys, well, you can kind of, wipe something and then put the fluid back, see if it comes back. But in all reality, most of the time you have to put it back in the machine and retest it. It's just, you just have to know that. All right, so magnetizing force applied. Okay, we're here. When the magnet force is applied in the opposite direction, so this is like demagnetizing it, the process is reversed. So I get it to a saturation down here. And I don't want to screw that up. Okay. You go the opposite. So if this is the same here, it's going to go the opposite. You're going to get a flux density here. And I think I can do, yes. Okay.
So is that coercivity? Is that why you turn it up, the amperage up just a little bit? Because you got to coerce it?
Because I'm coursing it the other way. Exactly. Because I got to get it go back the other way. So I didn't get into the coercivity and all this with you guys this time because it's really, I don't think they even bring this up on the level 1 stuff. So, but I do like this chart right here, which is, so you can see the hysteresis curve right here. Here's the H plus, H minus B. Let me see. Can you see that right there? So this is really the graph that I just showed you right here. That's the hysteresis loop. But here's the flux curve and what's happening. So if we start here and we give a magnetizing force, and it's going to come back here, right, which is my residual. Magnetizing force, it's going to come back to residual. So this explains why a diminishing current does in fact demagnetize something, because you would kind of look at it and say, well, wait a minute, if I decrease the current, isn't that enough? Doesn't that then not overpower? Do I not have enough coercive force to bring it back the other way? But it doesn't actually work that way. It really does work like this. So it'll bring it backwards, then the other way, then the other way, and it actually starts following this curve, and it follows it until you get it right back to 0.
So that's why it takes longer to demagnetize than...
Yeah, because you have to do it over and over. And the one unfortunate part about our machine is you don't really see what's happening. But as I think I've explained to a lot of you, the machine that I used was it was analog. And so I had this very large dial about this big, and it had like 1 through, I think, 25, or 1 was the most power and 25 was the least amount of power. And so if I had it on 2, it was this big dial, and it had a little hole in the end of the arm, and so you had to just like a clock. And you put it over the 2. And when I hit the demag switch, there was actually a mechanism that would move this arm all by itself all the way around the face of the clock. So 2, then 3, then 4, then 5. And it would just hit every single one of them and give it a half shot of magnetism till it got all the way down to the highest number, which was the lowest setting. Don't ask me why. And so that would demagnetize it. But so anyway, keep in mind that this is the actual current being applied. So as the current is applied one way, then the other, then this way, and it's showing that. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. As you can see, as it goes one way, as the current diminishes, so does the flux curve follows it until you get down to nothing.
So I have a stupid question.
Okay.
If you took the heads and put them as close together as they could,
Yep.
turn the amperage all the way up and hit the bar, do you think it would jump?
Nope.
No.
No, there's not that much. I'm surprised that it even arcs really, because there's not much voltage. It's pretty low voltage. All right. Having said that,